Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Very happy to have you here today. I'm Ann Pernick. I'm with Safe Cities at Stand.earth. And I want to thank you and our presenters for being here today. As people settle in, I'm going to introduce myself in the chat and invite you to do the same. And while we do that, I'm going to give a very quick overview of our webinar today and just a few details that you need to know. And yeah, just invite you to keep those introductions going. I want to note that we're recording the webinar, and I'll share the recording with everyone who registered. And I want to talk a little bit about the reason for the webinar and how our presenters are going to speak to it today. So Safe Cities at Stand.earth works with local government leaders and local advocates to pass policies to stop fossil fuel expansion and phase out fossil fuels, including building electrification. And as more resources and deadlines are coming forward from the Inflation Reduction Act and other programs to help local governments and partners decarbonize buildings in underserved communities, including BIPOC and low income communities, we're going to hear today about why that's important and how to do it well and with equity at the center, and about some existing and planned programs for this work. We'll focus only on US programs today, but we're working on more resources on Canadian programs. We'll hear presentations from our panel and then have time for Q&A. I'm going to invite everyone to put your questions in the Q&A tab at any point during the webinar. We'll get to as many as we can. And my colleague Michelle and I will also share a bit about how to stay connected to Safe Cities work along the way today. We have an amazing panel, and I'm going to introduce them now. James Trice is founder and CEO of Public Policy Project, or PPP, an independent provider of public policy consulting, training, strategic planning, community engagement, and advocacy services. PPP works with Black, Brown, and other marginalized communities to understand the role of public policies in shaping their experience of oppression and marginalization, and the opportunity to generate improved policy platforms that better promote well-being. James also launched the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, or EJCC, an entirely Black and Brown leadership base of agents of change working cooperatively on the environmental justice overburden in Black and Brown communities in Minnesota and beyond. We also have Stephanie Insinna-Sahondo, who directs the Weatherization Assistance Program for the Colorado Energy Office and has been with the Energy Office since 2019. Prior to that, she worked for several years in healthcare nonprofit programmatic delivery. She holds a BA in environmental studies and an MA in social change. She has a passion for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and currently sits on the National Association for State Community Services Programs Board of Directors, as well as the National Association for State Energy Officials Energy Equity Committee leadership team. Doug Jones has been with the Northwest Colorado Council of Governments, or Northwest COG, Energy Department for 20 years. He started as a weatherization installer, advanced to furnace tech, then energy auditor, inspector, and field supervisor before becoming director of Northwest COG's energy program in 2016. Before this, Doug achieved an associate degree in architectural technology, then worked for 5 years with a master home builder, during which time the two of them built everything from the ground up. We also have Charles Allen, the Ward 6 council member for Washington, D.C. He has championed legislative efforts around education, the environment, public transportation, campaign finance, election reform, public safety and criminal justice, and women's health. As Ward 6 council member, he has worked to provide every student with a great neighborhood school, supported small business, pushed for safe and accessible transit, and advocated for affordable housing. And Ward 6 has created more new affordable housing than any other ward. And we have Janani Shankaran, a federal policy advisor at the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE, where she strategizes around how to leverage and maximize federal funding for DOEE's climate and energy programs and monitors their implementation. Prior to DOEE, Janani served as an analyst at the Congressional Budget Office, where she worked closely with committees of the Senate and House of Representatives on natural resources, public lands, science, and energy legislation. Her previous work experience also includes urban and regional planning across communities in New Jersey and New York. Welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to start off with James Trice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this webinar with us. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you all can see it. I think you can. And let me see here. Oh, hold on. I'm trying to. There you go. I got it. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. Yeah, something's wrong. There we go. I'm trying to get this back up again.
It looked like it might have been showing our email when we were talking
There we
about
go. That's what it was doing. I got it now, I think. Thank you so much for participating. Again, my name is James Trice, founder and CEO of Public Policy Project and the creator of Environmental Justice Coordinating Council. And I have a few minutes here. I can't stay for the whole webinar. I'll stay for as long as I can, but I have another engagement. But I'm glad to be invited to participate in this. And so a couple of things I want to share, and this is, you can see, if you can see my screen, is there, how governments are using federal dollars to electrify buildings in underserved communities. And a couple of things I want to share is the impacts of high energy burden in fossil fuels in buildings on BIPOC and low income communities. So the Minnesota air pollution, in Minnesota, air pollution from burning fuels in buildings led to an estimated 865 early deaths and 9.69 million in health impacts costs in 2017, according to this report. Now, I can send this report to Annie, and she can send it out to individuals if they want to. But here are some links to that report. And these impacts do concentrate in underserved communities. So that's huge. That's humongous. And hence the need for us to continue to move toward decarbonization of buildings around the country. According to the EPA report that shows disproportionate impacts of climate change on socially vulnerable populations in the United States, again, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, that Black and African-American individuals, and when I say Black, we mean immigrants, African immigrants, and immigrants of color, Black and African-American individuals are projected to face higher impacts of climate change for all 6 impacts analyzed in this report. And the 6 impacts include air quality and health, extreme temperature and health, extreme temperature and labor, coastal flooding and traffic, coastal flooding and property, and inland flooding and property. These are the 6 impacts analyzed in this report. Compared to all other demographic groups, for example, with 2 degrees Celsius of global warming, Black and African-American individuals are 34% more likely to currently live in areas with the highest projected increases in childhood asthma diagnosis. This rises to 41% under 4 degrees Celsius of global warming. 40% more likely to currently live in areas with the highest projected increases in extreme temperatures related death. This rises to 59.9% under 4 degrees Celsius of global warming. Real quick story here. Several years ago, a group of community members, community activists, residents, really moved to remove a polluter, a major polluter in North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis is considered is an area where the largest population of African Americans, to be clear, African Americans, not African immigrants, but African Americans in the city of Minneapolis is in North Minneapolis. In that area, there's high concentration of heavy industry, a lot of manufacturing companies along the Mississippi River in North Minneapolis. It was none of them at that point were violating EPA standards, but there were one in particular that was called Northern Metals. We were able to move and able to get them out of North Minneapolis. They were considered a major contributor in the high levels of asthma as related illnesses based on their metal shredder and so forth. So we were able to sue them, get them out of North Minneapolis. They relocated to another area, but they were forced to pay to help address and mitigate some of the harm they caused. $600,000 to that area in North Minneapolis to really address the issues. We formed a committee called the Northern Metals Advisory Council, and now we renamed that Northern Metals Settlement Board to help determine how that money, that $600,000 should go to address asthma rates, asthma-related illnesses in North Minneapolis. And so community activists are moving to really address this issue. And so that was one victory that we won. We're still working, and I'm gonna get into this a little bit later in my presentation, working to really address those manufacturing companies that oftentimes, according to the father of environmental justice, Robert Bullard, that are really concentrated in Black and Brown, Indigenous, and poor communities around the country. I think he said that pollution is segregated, is what Robert Bullard said, and that oftentimes our communities are proliferated with these, or we're placed in areas where the large majority of the areas filled with a lot of these polluters. So let me continue. Fossil fuel prices are volatile, especially when stacked against increasingly renewable-based electricity. In March 2022, energy prices were responsible for 70% of price inflation on household bills. So you can see that RI energy price stability link. You can go to that and look at that. In 2020, 27% of all households surveyed by the Energy Information Administration Department, the EIA, of the Department of Energy. So you can go to www.eii.gov and get that report, reported experiencing energy insecurity. By comparison, 52% of Black households surveyed in 2020 reported experiencing energy insecurity by that same report, the Energy Information Administration. At the height of COVID-19 pandemic, Black households experienced 1.9 times greater odds of receiving a disconnection notice and 2.2 times greater odds of having their utility services disconnected than white household respondents, or those who responded. Hispanic households face disconnections at 1.9 times greater odds than white households, household respondents, according to that report. And so this, article has a ton of pretty eye-opening energy injustice numbers. So if you can look at that, I can get that to you as well. Data about the high-risk Black, Brown, low-income, or otherwise underserved communities face that wealthy customers will be able to transition off gas quickly, but these communities will be stuck on the system and left paying higher and higher bills as gas utilities seek to make a return on their investment in gas line expansion. And so this, if you go to these links as well, and again, I can send this to Annie for you all to get. So what can local government leaders do, and what should they do to center underserved communities as they develop and implement decarbonization policies with federal financial support? First, resident input and participation is critical. Form community advisory and accountability groups made up of underserved community members to help concentrate the development of appropriate decarbonization and renewable energy policies and practices. As an example, the MPCA Environmental Justice Advisory Group of the MPCA here in Minnesota was formed to really help advise the MPCA on how to really better engage these communities. There was an issue that happened with the group where they were not able to really prevent EPA from issuing a permit to a company wanting to build a oil pipeline, and they were not able to keep the EPA from doing that. So the MPCA is reforming that EJAC group to make it have more, give it more power and authority and more say on permitting. And so that's one of the things we're working on. So my group, Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, has been meeting with Commissioner Kessler and her staff, and really just helping to make recommendations on how the EJAC should operate, and what communities should be a part of that, and how they should really engage with MPCA as the MPCA tries to engage Black and Brown and Indigenous communities. There are EJ groups in Minnesota who are moving a bill at the legislature to reinstate the MPCA Community Board. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency was established in 1967. The agency was headed by a citizens board to ensure the agency served of the interests of the public and to establish an open and transparent decision-making process. The board had a full legal authority to make final decisions around environmental review, permitting, and rulemaking. In 2015, through a special session, the board was abolished and backdoor negotiations at the legislature, and was, so it was abolished at the time. So what we're trying to do is reestablish that. We are engaging legislators now at the state, House File 637, Senate File 466, to reestablish this community board with the full legal authority to make final decisions around environmental review and permitting. So
James, I'm going to hop in just for a second. Sorry. I just want to make sure that you're able to get through, because I know that you have to go early.
Yes.
Just because we do have folks from the Midwest, but we've got a national, even an international audience. So I see things in your presentation further down that are really important for folks, no matter where they are. And I just want to make sure that you have time to get through those.
Okay, cool. So what I do is I just do the headings and won't get into the fine details. So again, resident input and participation, form these community advisory councils. I know that the Department of Commerce has a collaborative, a community energy collaborative, which I'm a part of. And then I think more importantly too, when you form these groups, that these groups need to be compensated for their time with a nominal stipend. Many times our communities are asked to give of our time, our intellectual properties for free. I think it's important for government entities and organizations to really compensate nominally these groups for participating. Number two, prioritize resources for communities experiencing high impacts of carbon emissions and climate. So local government agencies can use data that show which communities are experiencing the worst health outcomes to inform their distribution of resources, including funding, staff time toward addressing and mitigating harms these communities are facing. Like for example, Minneapolis has a green zones, which they established to really put significant investment in North and South Minneapolis to really address these areas, environmental justice in North Minneapolis and around and in South Minneapolis. And then lastly, hire staff, Black, Brown, and marginalized from Black, Brown, and marginalized communities to engage and to really help engage those communities. So really, they need to really hire folks from these communities, really to be the lead at really reaching out to these communities and really hearing from them about what makes most sense. I think to increase the success of local government agencies at centering underserved communities when developing effective decarbonization policy, they must hire staff from marginalized communities and underrepresented communities in all levels of agency, particularly in decision-making and planning roles. So thank you so much.
James, thank you so much for that, for taking us through why this is so critical and some key steps on how to do it well and with equity and justice at the center. And I will be very happy to send that document with all those great links out to everybody and as follow-up for the webinar. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. And then we are going to go next to, I think we're going to go next to Doug and to Stephanie. And I welcome Councilmember Allen. I see you here, and we're going to give you a moment to settle in, and we'll have you and Janani go next. And so Doug and Stephanie, let's have you go ahead and start. And I know you've got some slides. If you have any trouble, I can take that over.
All right. I'll show some slides about halfway through. Thank you. My name is Doug Jones. I'm the director of the energy program at Northwest Colorado Council of Governments. We're a weatherization assistance program provider, which is a federally funded, trained, developed program to help qualified applicants save energy, have a safe home. And so we go out over 13 counties of Northwest Colorado, about a quarter of the state, an area the size a little larger than West Virginia. And we provide these services with our in-house crews. We've been doing this for 40 years. And about 6 years ago, we we came, line was drawn in the sand. We lost a bunch of our staff, including our director, our fiscal office, and our outreach department all at once. And it was a very trying time, but it was also a great opportunity to do something better and to redesign our program. It started with a culture change. We started getting employee feedback. What tools do you want to use? How do you want to work? Just not only employee feedback, but buy-in on the direction of our program. And we noticed something, that the WAP program gave us an incredible foundation as far as working on qualified clients, saving energy with our in-house crews, and it gave us a great foundation to be able to do more. We started talking about looking into fee-for-service work, and we brought in some programs that help people with the next income level up. We started doing more furnace work. And what we noticed after a little while was not only were we helping 4 times as many clients in Northwest Colorado, but this all kind of gave back to the federally funded WAP program, where we were better furnace techs. We were better at helping clients. We were able to pay our staff a little bit more and better employee retention. So all of a sudden, this is like turning into something great. And one of our local counties reached out and wanted to do more. They said, what you're doing is great, but how do we do more? So we developed a beneficial electrification program. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. So we developed can you see that? Yep, all right. We developed a beneficial electrification program where we're taking clients, we would go out and do the WAP work, the building shell measures, right? Insulation, air sealing, duct sealing, whatever the home needed. And we started talking about how can we do more? And the answer was we identified propane homes and we identified electrifying these homes. So we had an incredible bunch of partners. Our local county, our local utility, our nonprofits in the area all chipped in. And we had incredible support from the Colorado Energy Office. And thank you, Stephanie, for that. And I don't know that we would have went down this road without that level of support, honestly. And so they were very excited about it and kind of gave us a push in the right direction. We started doing some outreach events at this local mobile home park. The whole park was on propane. It was basically a typical mobile home, right? And these folks had furnaces that were in disrepair. And when you have the high cost of propane, why spend the money to fix it, right? Why not just put an electric space heater up? So that's what a lot of our clients were using. Workflow, we did the building shell measures first, then some electrical upgrades. And then we started installing air source heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, and induction ranges. And we also purchased new cookware to work well with those induction ranges, where setting our clients up for success. We were very lucky with our contractors that we hired. We don't do electrical in-house, so we hired a local contractor, DJ Electric, and he and his father actually had a hand in building this park. So they knew all the infrastructure. We also worked with Diamond H Enterprises, and they trained us on how to install cold climate heat pumps. So this is an outside coil and then an inside air handler. Heat pump water heaters were challenging. They were tight, and but we got them in there, and the clients love them, and they work really well. And then our induction ranges are just fantastic. This is a Frigidaire model, and yeah, they work really well. And even our clients that are cooks and at-home chefs love these models. And then the cookware was actually very wonderful for them as well. We increased indoor air quality, right? We're eliminating the combustion of, of combustible appliances. So you're not having those gas ranges putting carbon monoxide into this little tight home anymore. You don't have the problems of water heaters spilling carbon monoxide out, or the chance of that happening. We also installed some bath fans and some range hoods. We found so many gas leaks doing this. And so it was really wonderful to see the gas line capped off to these units when we were done. So this is the really exciting stuff. This was a single mom with a 10-year-old daughter, and they kept their house at low 60s in the winter because they were with electric space heaters, right? And before, their 2020 energy costs with propane and electric was almost $1,300. We eliminated their propane bill, and their electric bill went down. So we added all these electric appliances, and the electric bill still went down because what we started with was such inefficient electric appliances. Same thing on this unit. This unit had a lot of a huge energy burden. So some really good savings. And then this one, so we eliminated propane, electric bill. They had teenagers that were jumping the thermostat up and using a lot of electricity. So, but even with that, we were still saving a lot of money. We averaged $599 a year in savings after the first year. So that was really exciting to see. That just kind of spells out all the different numbers. The benefit of this, this just hits all the bullet points for me. Eliminating combustion of fossil fuels, energy savings, a safe home for our clients, and we're helping families in need. And now we're working on a solar field to support the WAP clients in this area. So we're increasing the electric, but then we're going to have a solar field to help out this community, which is going to be just wonderful. After we started this, the Colorado Energy Office continued their support, and now we are installing these throughout our 13 counties. Our crews absolutely love this. They love the learning how to install these high-tech appliances and heating and cooling. And that's the other thing. Now these clients have cooling in the summer. They're not in this small little mobile home and suffering all summer long. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie. Thank you. Let's see, stop sharing.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks everyone for having me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well and run through a couple of slides. Is everyone able to see that? Okay, great. So yeah, thank you so much to Doug and his passion and really the felt passion that he kind of disseminates through his team. It's been so exciting. I don't think if Doug wouldn't have presented this to us, I don't know that we would have jumped in this direction as quickly as we did. I wanted to share with you, in 2020, I think it was around April, or maybe it was 2021. I don't even know anymore. I feel like all time got different with COVID. But we all got together, the whole Colorado Weatherization Network, and we came up with a programmatic purpose statement. And it was based on a survey that we had sent out to past clients. I think it was over the past 2 or 3 years, and just asked them, what was your felt value for after your weatherization services? So we have this sort of federal mission to reduce energy costs, but we really wanted to understand, is that actually what people are feeling? And what we found was that people were most excited. The felt value was around saving money, increasing comfort, bettering their home, but also kind of contributing. We saw a lot of responses around contributing to a better global environment. And so we came up with this programmatic purpose statement, which has really been our North Star since then. It's been really great to have everything that we're doing now. We're kind of going back to this purpose statement and saying, are we fulfilling this? And so I just wanted to give a quick timeline of, and again, this is statewide, of our beneficial electrification activities. And, we started in 2019, we got really excited, and then COVID hit. We had pretty ambitious goals for 2020, but fell short of that for obvious reasons. But as soon as we were able to get back at it, we came back strong. In 2021, we did 31, and then we also did 31 homes, air source heat pumps in 2022. And so I think we have 35 is our anticipated total. And these are based on our fiscal years, which run July 1st through June 30th. So our 2023 fiscal year, we're getting ready to end on June 30th, and we're anticipating having around 35 finished. So we're hoping to see that trend continue and to really support it amongst all the agencies. We have 6 subgrantee agencies in our network. 5 of them are really what we call our single family agencies. We have 1 statewide multifamily agency, but everybody is on board with doing more beneficial electrification for clients and getting air source heat pumps in homes. I think we started out with really not the mandate, but the desire to address electric and propane homes. Natural gas is a whole nother issue, especially when we're thinking about equity. And so, electric and propane, it makes a lot of sense. The costs, getting a more efficient electric heating source into a home is only going to serve the client better. It's easy, and we get our obvious carbon reductions from that. With propane, we're going to help the client with their energy security, obviously going to see some energy cost savings, and then improve their indoor air quality, as Doug talked about. Where we get into some questionable, I think, more kind of equitable issues is when we're talking about switching folks from natural gas. We've all experienced the natural gas price increases that have happened this year, this past winter, and it's been intense, but it is still cheaper than electricity in most cases. So when we're looking at taking folks off of a natural gas fired furnace and putting them on an air source heat pump, we have to really think about how that's going to affect them. Furthermore, if they don't have cooling, if they've never had cooling, they're going to see an increase in cooling in electricity during the summer months when they're using that for cooling. And we want that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are setting them up for the best success. And so really what we've sort of come to is we cannot fuel switch folks off of natural gas without pairing it with solar. And that is the most equitable thing to do. And, as we're moving into all this funding, the IRA rebates, these are all really great opportunities. But when we're looking at setting people up for success, for, helping to raise the level the playing field, so to speak, we really need to make sure that we're pairing things like beneficial electrification with energy efficiency retrofits. If people are, especially low-income clients, if they are taking advantage of the IRA rebates without also making their homes more energy efficient, they're inherently setting themselves up for higher electricity bills. And so really just making sure that through weatherization, we're helping people with that. And I think we've done a great job doing that. Doug alluded to a lot of this, at the state level, why we're doing this is really for all of these reasons. It's that felt value that the client's going to feel. It is reducing their energy burden, which is so important. Here in Colorado, our weatherization assistance program is situated in the Colorado Energy Office. And we've got some really great partnerships with our governor's office and our governor's priorities. And so we're aligned with our state priorities, which is really exciting. Utility partnerships are so key in this as well. Until we really get this forward momentum in beneficial electrification, the costs of these appliances are still pretty high. And so, when we can partner with utilities to get rebates when we're installing these appliances, it's really important. Helping clients participate in the green economy is really important too. That survey that we sent out 3 years ago was really telling. A lot of people were really excited about their impact on greenhouse gas reduction. So lots of great outcomes to this. How we did this is, we're very lucky in our weatherization assistance program here in Colorado to have multiple funding sources. So we're not just reliant on our Department of Energy sort of WAP funding. We also have our LIHEAP funding, and we get a full 15% transfer from our state LIHEAP office for use in weatherization. And that really has helped propel our innovation. We have amazing relationships with our subgrantee agencies, and I'll talk a little bit about how that has changed over the years. And then finally, we paid attention to stakeholder engagement. It was so important for us to, at the state level, model what needs to happen, how we need to be engaging, how we need, we don't want to be innovating in a closed environment. We want to innovate not just with our subgrantee network either. We want to talk to clients. We want to talk to community-based organizations. There's a lot of distrust in government, and for obvious reasons. And so we understand that we might be shouting from the hilltops, like, this is so great, and it's free, and it's wonderful, and we can do all these wonderful things for you. They're probably not going to trust us. And so really building those relationships with community-based organizations, reaching out, connecting with schools and churches, and talking to the organizations that communities trust. So that was, I think that's been a key piece of our success. And then finally, I just want to talk, Doug mentioned culture shift at Northwest Cog, and we had a pretty huge culture shift at the Colorado Energy Office. We went from, and I started in 2019 with the office, so I was very fortunate. I was really brought in to help repair a lot of the relationships. So I have a background in relationship management. I'm a very collaborative leader. I think about things very holistically. And so, I saw sort of this broken relationship, and our director at the time saw that too. And he wanted to change it, but didn't really know how to change it. And so, we went from this bureaucratic program administration, like, here's the rules, you can't deviate from this, finger wagging, you did it wrong, figure it out. No room for mistakes. We know what's best at the state level. Just do what we say. Everything was by one standard, and that was our most strict standard. And so we really through a lot of listening, moved to this more supportive servant leadership role from the state, which hadn't really been done too much. And what we moved to was really leading through learning together, right? Allowing for mistakes to happen. They're going to happen. Nobody's perfect. We're dealing with a lot of different rules and regulations. But being a trusted place for our agencies to come and talk to us and say, hey, I want to do this. I think this is really exciting. Can we do it? How can we do it? Can we work together? Here are my thoughts. And so troubleshooting innovation, troubleshooting problems, right? Doing all of that together, working collaboratively around those types of things, and then creating flexible programming where we're not all just by the Department of Energy standards anymore. We have several different funding sources, and some of those funding sources are very, are much less restrictive in their funding rules. And so how can we use that to better benefit the clients that we're serving? We have one funding source where we can go up to 80% AMI versus our DOE and our LIHEAP funding, we can only do 60% SMI. And so, you know, how do we, it makes the program so much more complicated. But it's been wonderful to see that our agencies trust us enough to want to do that. And we're collaborating and we're figuring out how best to work with each other to make this program the most successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. When we get to Q&A after our other presenters, I know people are wanting to know a little bit more about how the funding for the program has changed over time and how the IRA dollars might come in. And so I'll just let you and Doug kind of think about that. And in the meantime, I want to go to Councilmember Charles Allen and Janani to talk about some things that are going on in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C.
Great, thanks. Well, I'll jump right in. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Allen. I am the Ward 6 council member, and I'm chair of the council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment of the DC Council, our state legislature. So one of my biggest priorities is looking for the ways that we're going to have the district shift away from fossil fuel use through greener buildings, electrification of homes, expansion of e-vehicles and e-bikes, and fare-free and better bus transit, public transit. Of course, all those policies are expensive. So how are we thinking about using our federal funding to implement these shifts? That's what I'm going to try to talk about. In this year's budget, we expect the district's DOEE, that's our Department of Energy and Environment, it's going to have close to $60 million in federal funding from the Inflation Reduction Act to implement climate programs with the potential to apply for even more. Included in this are going to be funding to defray the cost of shifting homes from appliances that burn fossil fuels on site to healthier, more climate-friendly electric appliances. So in anticipation of that funding coming later this year, in February, a couple months ago, I introduced what I call the Healthy Homes and Residential Electrification Amendment Act of 2023. So what this bill does is it gives DC residents the opportunity as well as the incentives to switch away from fossil fuel powered appliances to clean electric stoves, heat pumps, hot water heaters in their homes. I think everybody on this call already knows this shift is urgent, and the urgency is twofold. First, there's an increasing consensus that gas stoves and heat contribute significantly to poor air quality inside the home, and that leads to increased respiratory diseases, particularly among vulnerable children. And second, natural gas is primarily methane, a fossil fuel which emits carbon when burned. So in order to meet our climate goals, dramatically reduced use of natural gas must happen at the household level very quickly. The shift has to also be considered, though, with equity in mind, and I appreciate some of the earlier conversation on this. We know that the health impacts of gas stoves, for example, are disproportionately affecting lower income renters and homeowners. And in the district, this corresponds with communities of color. We want to ensure that all residents have access to clean and healthy air in their homes, not just who's can afford it to buy that new appliance and to make necessary retrofits. And that's why I think the bill is so important. So what it does is it makes it so that households earning 80% of the area median income or less, so in the district, that's going to be about $80,000 a year, would incur no cost, including the purchase and installation to make the switch to electric appliances. And the IRA allows for 100% rebates for households at this income level. Often we see federal laws try to utilize tax incentives and rebates to make the change they want to create. And that's mostly effective for middle and upper income households that can front those costs of the appliances and then see the rebate, next year in their taxes. The problem is that leaves out our working families and lower income households. So that's why we've got to have our local government step in and create a system, because otherwise those households are going to get left behind if we don't keep equity front of mind. Now, for households with higher income levels, there's a sliding scale for cost sharing for electrification. So that would be between roughly 80% to 150% of AMI, specifying that households at 80 to 100% of AMI cannot pay more than 50% of the cost. And the IRA allows for 50% reimbursement for those households between 80 and 150% of AMI. So the district's going to use local funds to supplement the federal dollars so that some households could pay less than 50% of that electrification cost. And the bill's obviously taking advantage of our IRA funding by setting up a structure for our Department of Energy and Environment to get the funding out the door to electrify homes, starting with the households who are going to need the assistance the most. DOEE would need to have some flexibility in just exactly what programs would look like, but we envision something like this where a household would apply, DOEE would match them with a contractor, and the contractor then works the household, does the work, and then DOEE pays the contractor directly. That's an important part of this. The IRA also includes funding for contractor training. So the bill requires DOEE to partner with nonprofits to create contractor training and job training. Specifically, that DOEE should subsidize the cost of contractors and district residents in order to maximize participation of equity impact enterprises in contracting and district residents and hiring. There is a lot of money coming over the next few years. And if we don't have our workforce trained and ready and our small local businesses ready to be trained up, we're going to miss another really important part of this, is having our DC residents and especially communities of color participate in this growing and new economy that's going to be coming. Some other aspects that I wanted to highlight of the bill that aren't necessarily related to IRA. We would require that DOEE have to publish a plan for how this program is going to work, how it's required to report out yearly, who the program's serving. That just helps us with accountability and transparency. It also has our Green Building Advisory Council provide guidance to DOE about how to implement a program most equitably and efficiently. The legislation also adds a 0.005, that's half of 1 cent, per BTU fee for permits for installation of fossil fuel burning appliances, including replacements. So, Joe Manchin, I'm not coming in to actually get your gas stove, rip it out myself, haul it away on my back. But we do want to say, if you're going to replace an appliance, yes, if you're going to continue to use a fossil fuel burning appliance, there's a cost that comes with that, and then we reinvest that cost back into the electrification changes that we need. The bill prohibits the DC Housing Authority, that's our public housing authority, from installing fossil fuel burning appliances and systems when building through what we call our rental assistance demonstration program. There's actually several communities with planned redevelopments under the RAD program. And what this is going to do is help ensure that our public housing residents can live in healthier homes free from methane. We have done a lot of work where we have found some of our poorest air quality is in our public housing, and some of our least efficient housing and most expensive energy costs are in our public housing. So every dollar we're wasting with inefficient heating and cooling is a dollar we need to reinvest back into dignified, safe housing. And we're clearly not meeting the mark right now. So this legislation tries to tackle that as well. And again, our recent HUD report noted that our public housing authority spends triple per unit on utilities from what other similar housing authorities spend. So it's just a huge cost savings for dirty, unhealthy, inefficient air and heat. So where we are in the legislative process, we're going to hold a hearing on this bill in May. I believe May 9th is the date we're aiming for. Then my goal is to then move that up to a committee vote and then full council vote in the fall. We are expecting that we're going to see some guidance coming out of the federal agencies, probably sometime this summer. So we want to have our hearing, get our good feedback, let that guidance come in, and then be able to make the package, the legislative package, be ready to move forward when we come back from our legislative recess in August in September. And I think this is going to line up well with the release of funding, with the guidance on funding. So we're really ready to go and get this implemented as quickly as we can. So that's a quick snapshot of where we are in the district and some legislation that we're really excited about moving in a couple of months.
Great, thank you so much. And now we're going to have Janani take us through the DOEE side of this in terms of preliminary IRA planning and what's going on with different programs.
Great, thanks, Anne, and great to hear from you, Councilmember Allen. So, we're really excited to work with you as that legislation moves through the process, but I did want to touch on some of the things that DOEE has already stood up over the last few years and some of our initial kind of ideas around the Inflation Reduction Act. We're really focused on the building sector because 70% of greenhouse gas emissions in the district do come from buildings. So, honing in on that sector, here are some of the things that we've done so far. A few years ago, we worked with our sustainable energy utility to stand up a decarbonization pilot program, which provides weatherization services, replacement of fossil fuel appliances with electric ones, and on-site or community solar at no cost to low-income residents. A few years ago, we were also the first city in the nation to adopt building energy performance standards. So as part of that, we took American Rescue Plan Act funding to stand up an affordable housing retrofit accelerator to help under-resourced or resource-constrained affordable housing properties come into compliance with our building energy performance standards. Make housing more comfortable for tenants, more livable, more energy efficient without increasing rents for low-income households. So that's, an initiative we're really proud of, and we're in the process right now of starting to initiate some of those upgrades to multi-family affordable housing buildings. And then, looking a few years down the line, we do have net zero codes that are going to take effect in 2026. So this is largely going to address electrifying new construction and substantial improvements. In terms of inflation reduction strategy, it's still pretty early on, as I'm sure everyone knows. We don't really have the full guidance from federal agencies yet around what those programs are going to look like, what eligible uses are, and how they're going to prioritize different uses. But I think, looking to that funding, we're hoping to continue support for the Affordable Housing Retrofit Accelerator. We have about 35 to 40 properties enrolled in the program so far, but there's still going to be a huge gap that we need to fulfill to ensure that multifamily affordable housing buildings in the district come into compliance with the building energy performance standards. As the council member kind of hinted at, we're expecting $60 million roughly in formula funding coming our way under the Department of Energy Home Rebates Program. And I think to the extent possible, as Stephanie kind of touched on this earlier, but we really want to take a whole home approach where we can. We don't want to electrify without weatherizing if feasible to avoid some of those higher electric costs. And I think to the extent we can, we really want to go in and do a single intervention in each of our homes and try to connect and coordinate this program with some of the existing programs within the district. I think, again, to the extent feasible, we want to make this as low cost or no cost for low income households as possible, and target certain neighborhoods within the district. We're really excited about the energy efficient home improvement credit. I think this is going to be a really great tax credit to continue momentum over the next 5 to 10 years, particularly for those higher income households. So there's going to have to be some sort of promotion, outreach around this tax credit. And I think we're really going to have to work to connect households with some of the advising services and resources that can help them sequence the tax credit and their home improvements to kind of maximize the savings under that. We're also looking to the 179D commercial buildings deduction as a way to help support the energy efficiency and electrification of commercial and public buildings within the district. Just wanted to touch on a few kind of areas that I think are going to be challenges, as the council member kind of hit on before. Certainly workforce development and engaging contractors. We want to ensure that there's going to be a capable and ready workforce within the next year to start ramping up an electrification and energy efficiency program. I think, of course, along the same lines, we're going to have to, do some really good engagement with the public, especially underserved or traditionally marginalized communities that may have been left out of some of these processes before, to really demonstrate not only the energy and cost saving benefits, but also the health benefits of electrification. And I think, again, this was hinted on before, but, we really want to make sure that gas ratepayers aren't shouldering higher costs down the road as gas is phased out. So I think that's another challenge that we're going to have to address within the next few years. But all said, we're really excited about some of the funding coming down the pike under the Inflation Reduction Act, and really excited to kind of continue building on some of our existing efforts and see our plans and visions kind of, come to life and really accelerate the transition.
Great, Janani, thank you so much. And we are going to move into Q&A. And I know we're a little bit tight on time, but we're going to try to get to some of these questions. I'm going to give people an opportunity to type new questions in the Q&A tab. And then there are a couple that are already in the queue. And while people do that, I'm just going to give a quick moment from my colleague Michelle from Safe Cities and me to talk a little bit about a couple of networks that we have at Safe Cities that we hope people will connect with. So I facilitate our NEOS network for local government leaders, and that includes staff, elected officials, and volunteers on advisory boards. We have a meeting every other month. This is a group that includes folks from the US and Canada, meeting every other month. Our meeting is tomorrow. So if you sign up today, I'll get you in there. And we also have working groups on building electrification for new buildings, one for electrification of existing buildings, one for transportation, and I think some other ones will also come together this year. And it's an opportunity to network with other folks who are trying to do the same thing, pass local policies on fossil fuels, and to get resources and samples of policies that are passing in other places, and also get support from Safe Cities in passing them. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Michelle to talk about our organizing network, and I'm going to put the links to sign up for both in the chat.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Anne, for that. As is probably not a surprise to many folks, if you don't exist in this world of talking about policies and talking about building emissions performance, it could be really confusing. And so, as we've discussed, has been kind of a consistent theme. The public-facing piece of it, of actually getting people to understand what this means for their home, and also getting support in passing better, stronger laws, is a big part of the work. And that is exactly what the organizing network piece is meant to help support. This is housed through the Safe Cities program. It's kind of a complement to the work that Anne is doing, where I'm working with activist groups and also just regular people who want to do work on climate change, but perhaps aren't as fluent in sort of all these conversations about electrification. So I welcome folks to join that space as well if you find it particularly interesting. We have groups from all over the country, so you get to hear a little bit about what's working in different regions. What's successful on the West Coast is not necessarily what's successful in the rural parts of the state. So that happens every month, every third Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And I believe Anne will also drop a link for that if you are interested in signing up for that. But excited to share the space with y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I know that we have a question for the folks in DC. If you could, if you have a link to the current draft of the ordinance, if you can share that in the chat, and if it's not that handy, if you can just send it to me, then I will, I can send it out to everybody after in the follow-up.
We just posted it. So if you look there, Sonia on my staff just posted that there.
Oh, thank you. And thanks, Sonia. Wonderful. And then we have a question for the Colorado folks on how the funding, how you're funding this program and kind of how that's changed over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I mentioned we're very fortunate in Colorado to have multiple funding sources. So the majority of our energy efficiency work is funded through our federal funds, our Department of Energy, and our LIHEAP through HHS, through those funds. A lot of our sort of special projects, so our beneficial electrification and our solar, is happening with our state dollars, and we have a few different sources of those. So one, our most flexible funding sources is from our utility rebate dollars. So there are several measures that our agencies install with our dollars, such as attic insulation, air sealing, and as long as they're meeting different pre and post requirements of those, furnace replacements, health and safety measures, and also some low cost measures, things like that are all eligible for utility rebate dollars. And so that has really helped us really kind of kickstart a lot of these great projects. We also recently had in 2021, we had a bill that passed that required all investor-owned utilities to add on an energy assistance system benefit charge of like 50 cents. And I think it increased to 75 cents after 1 year. It's optional, folks can opt out. It's an automatic opt-in, but they can opt out. And that is 50% of that basically goes to help people with bill assistance. And then the other 50% comes to weatherization. That money is restricted and can only be used in investor-owned utility territory, but that is the majority of the state, at least probably 3/4 of the state, I would say, in either through gas or electric. So those are our super flexible dollars, and we're able to really just braid all of those together to get as much benefit as we can.
Terrific. Thank you, Stephanie. We have a question that came in that I want to invite anyone to answer. And this it is that last question that I can see, which is good because I know we're at the hour already and you all are busy. So with the question is, with permitting for alternative energy and upgraded transmission lines 7 to 15 years or more, I think maybe they mean 7 to 15 years out to get our grid fully upgraded, maybe is what they mean. How will brownouts be avoided in urban areas as we switch to EV and electrified buildings? I just invite anyone to jump in on that.
I'll jump in. I think our strategy in the district is to first focus on making things more energy efficient. So if you think of this as like a pie, we want to make the pie smaller. And so, reducing the load on the grid, but also seeing where we can implement things like microgrids, I think, and, other resilient infrastructure is going to be a really key strategy to kind of addressing some of these permitting challenges.
Great, Janani. And I think the work that you all are doing on solar is also very helpful. The really local solar projects are going to help us be less reliant on the overall grid. And also the very high efficiency appliances that are being brought in are going to help as well. Yeah, please.
I could just add briefly to that, just to pick up on what she was just saying. Like, I think from a policy perspective, I think we've got phenomenal leadership at the department level. So DOEE has proven to be just a remarkable leader across the district in helping think through how this works. And then from the policy making standpoint, we're also looking at things to kind of help shrink that pie, right? Policy efforts like our BEPS, our Building Energy Performance Standards, ways that we are trying to benchmark and then lower our overall energy consumption from our buildings is so we're trying to match both the policy making that moves us towards and incentivize that type of electrification and pair that with the policy making that also is drawing down the amount of energy that's consumed and being much more efficient. So I think as a legislator here, trying to have those parallel policies that are moving together is one of the ways we try to get at how to answer your question.
Wonderful. I'm just checking. I think this is the question that we just answered. Okay, great. I wish we had more time, but I want to thank you all so much for being here today, for speaking on this, and for all the work you're doing. I want to thank our audience for being engaged in this issue, and for the work that you all are doing in your communities. And I hope we get to stay connected with you all through Safe Cities. And I will share the recording out again to everyone who registered, as well as some of the other resources that have been shared today. And thanks again, everyone, for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you.